Hey, Brad.
Hey,
Saturday, I think. Mark on Saturday, I think it was Saturday at least, had some nice things to say about those freshman linebackers. What what are you seeing from those kids? Are they kind of how's that situation setting up there? I know Jaquez, it looked like he was out on Tuesday. I don't know if he's back or when you're kind of projecting him to be be able to be out there with that group.
Yeah, you know what? They've done some good things. Obviously there's a lot of defense they have to wade through, and so they're still doing that. But they're conscientious. The fun thing about it is they love ball. They take coaching. Obviously, Coach Summerall does a great job with those two. And they've got a knack for finding the football. So they may be in a wrong gap, but they've just got a little sneaky wiggle. They can slide through a gap, find a ball carrier. They've got good strike on contact, but there's a lot to learn for them. So, the big thing is not to heap too much on their shoulders too early. But I'm encouraged by what I've seen, and looking forward to continuing here. We need every single practice we can in camp. When you're talking about a freshman.
Dick.
Coach, you talked a lot about the need to get to the quarterback, do a better job at that this year. What have you seen in practice, if anything, that has made you optimistic about being better at that this year?
Yeah, I think that's hard a little bit to tell at times in camp, because you go against the same guys every day. So sometimes you get a little bit more of a tendency read. You've got an idea of what sort of the set period is, so you know how to rush. So I think it's hard to gauge. There's some things, I like what Jordan Wright's doing right now, as a rusher. Obviously, Josh Paschal, I think is having a good camp, but to say that, we're going to have this thing flipped, immediately and get, 3+ sacks a game. I can't say that, we'll see how it goes. It has that feel, back from 19, when after we lost Josh, and, I think it's going to have to come from some different angles, and I've got to do a good job of putting guys in position to succeed, create some one-on-one matchups, try to get a free runner if we can. But when we get a one-on-one, we've got to win it. And so, I don't know if that truly answers your question. I don't know. That's one that I'm still out there. I'm not optimistic that it's, we're going to have 30-something sacks, but we've got pieces in place to be successful as a pass rush unit, but they've got to rush together. When we run a blitz, they've got to run the pattern right. Everybody's got to understand. And then at the end of the day, too, the back end coverage has got to get sticky. And, because like I said, I think Phil probably had 3 or 4 last year where he's hitting the quarterback, but we just weren't sticky enough in the back end. So it takes all 11. I know that the front gets the brunt, of that critique. But, everybody's got to do their job, including the coaching staff.
Thanks.
Derek.
Hey, Brad. I guess, how do you feel at this point in camp about the depth across the defense? Are you comfortable with it, or still going to take some time to figure that out?
Yeah. You know what? At certain spots, you probably feel better than others. And that's at any program across the country. And I feel okay. It's not overwhelmingly like, oh yeah, we can lose anybody at any position and be just fine. There are guys that play at a high level and at a higher level than others. And so you need to try to keep those guys. But I do feel good about the fact that, hey, those next guys up have been dialed in. They're improving. They're getting better. They need to continue to get better to play at SEC, winning football. But they're coming to work every single day. And that's all I can ask. I like the energy of this group. They attack meetings. They take good notes. They go out to practice. There's only been maybe 1 or 2 practices where, I felt a little bit of a lull, and, the staff, had to help try to motivate that. Most times, it's player led. So that's a positive. And that's half the battle. So we need to continue to grind. We're sort of in the dog days right now, the middle, as much as 2 days, or it's not even 2 days, whatever the training camp is these days. And they just have to continue to push through. And before we know it, we're going to be 2 weeks out from game 1.
John Hale.
Brad, maybe just because he's so steady, we don't talk about him as much, but Yusef Corker has been such a big piece of this defense for a couple of years now. What's your message to him for the next step for him to take this season?
Really, it comes down to go be great, because he has been really, 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 I don't know how many reallys I can make until it hits great, but it's like he's right on the cusp of being a great, great player. And I'm glad you brought him up, because I don't think we've really talked about him, through training camp, and he's one that people need not forget. He's been Mr. Reliable for us over the last 2 years, made a ton of plays, makes all the checks in the back end. Now it's, hey, go make those difference-making plays, game-changing type plays. And I've got to put him in some positions to let him go do that. We've seen in the past, that Mike Edwards that makes a game-saving interception, makes a game-saving, strip sack or forced fumble, something like that. It's been awesome that he's been incredibly solid, reliable. You named the positive adjective, that's Yusef. But now we need to attach greatness to it. And if he can play at that level, then this defense can do something really special.
Larry.
Yeah, Brett, on the defensive front, have any of those young linemen kind of jumped out at you and made the kind of step you were hoping for so far?
Yeah, that's a great question, Larry. I've been positive. I've been optimistic, about those 2 freshmen that we have. And then obviously that 2020 group is all sort of made strides. We've talked about Josiah and Trayvon, and Sam in that group, Justin Rogers, all sort of starting to come into their own, and they're going to find sort of a niche role, because they're all a little bit sort of different and unique in their own way. And then you throw in the mix, a guy like Khalil Saunders, who comes in as a true freshman, and he's got some length, and he's got a little bit of twitch in his body. But he's a young pup, and he and Jamarius, they're what you look for. You talk about, hey, when they step off the bus, people are like, okay, that's what an SEC defensive lineman looks like. But they have to figure out the speed and the pace and the strength, and the same things that those 4, for better sense of word, redshirt freshmen, I know they got COVID years or whatever, but they had a feel, in that 20 class. So, but as a group, I think they're doing a really good job. Coach Stewart, hammers those guys on technique. Their technique is so much better. They're fundamentally sound, so much better. We talk about Josh, but Marquand has been such a leader in that group, and he's pushing and demanding of those guys. And so that's been good to see.
What about Abule?
He's one that's, again, he's going to be a major factor for us. I didn't include him in the young guys, deal there, Larry, but Abule is going to have to be a major. He's a massive individual. You talk about, what there's, when you look up and he's broad shoulders, he's starting to really understand what we're asking of those guys. I think early on it was very developmental for him when he first got here, and then over these last couple of years. Big thing with him, he just needs to continue to try to stay healthy. And if we can keep him healthy, he's a guy that's going to help us. And I know an earlier question, I think Derek asked, about depth. That's one position, those guys up front, that I feel like we can roll bodies, and we're not going to lose all that much.
Nick,
2 of your cornerbacks last year might be starting week 1 in the NFL. How are the guys stepping in to replace them? And even more so the younger guys that, haven't necessarily gotten those reps on Saturdays.
Yeah, it's some trial by fire. They've and especially going against the offense that we go against, they're getting stretched. A lot of different route concepts, and so it's going to make them better corners. It's forced them to have some short memories in practice, and that's good because you're going to have it on Saturdays. So obviously it's nice to have a guy like Said, an older guy that's played in games that can help those guys along so they know what to expect. Obviously Quandre's played in games, but then you've, younger guys like obviously Carrington and Andrew Phillips, so those 4 are going to have to, they're going to have to help us, all of them in some form or fashion. If you're not a starter, you better train and prepare like a starter, because they're going to be in the games.
Jeff,
Yeah, Brad, I was wondering if you could talk about Sam a little more, and Annalie, and his progress and what you've seen from him lately.
Yeah, again, I think Sam is a little bit like how Abule was. I think he's farther along, because for Sam, there was a little bit of that, obviously the position switch. So to go from playing sort of defensive end in high school, then he played the year standing up at Jack, and then moving to that field end, there's some processing, and it's not like he's played football, since he was 3 years old. So, but you talk about conscientious, he wants to do right. He studies, he knows which way to go. But we have to get to the point where we just cut loose. At times there's too much thinking, and especially when you got a guy that's only 6 inches away from you, there's no time to think. You can think pre-snap. When the ball snap, post-snap, it has to be violent hand, strike, strain, right? And work, what is my step, right? You're getting ear hold. So that's the process that he's going through. All those young D linemen have had to sort of go through that. And then, the true freshman linemen are learning that right now. You better throw your hands quick, because if you don't, all right, you're gonna have 2 sets of hands on you in a heartbeat.
all right, we got a couple more. John Wong.
Brad, we haven't heard much from you regarding name, image, and likeness. I know Mark at the beginning said he was a little bit concerned about the distraction that it may cause on the defensive side of the ball. How much of a distraction has that been?
That's a question for coach, but for me, I haven't seen any distraction at all. I haven't fielded any phone calls for me, so I guess I'm not that popular. But that's okay. But no, it hasn't affected us at all. The focus has been fantastic through camp. And so I mean, if it hadn't been out there, I wouldn't have known it.
All right, Adam, and then we'll wrap up with Josh.
Hey, Brad, with all those seniors and veterans, I guess you have on the defense, to this point in camp, do you feel like you're farther ahead than you were in the past, or is it just kind of the same?
Yeah, Adam, it's a unique question, because I would say yes and no. you know, from the fact that, yes, I do feel like I can make certain tweaks to certain things, almost game planish type adjustments, you know, to get us ready or to try to combat what we're seeing in practice. The no piece being that they're facing a different style offense, and then when they go through their install, you know, it feels like there's a lot of coaching that you have to do to combat that offense. So whereas some of the tweaks, say in the past, if we were going against the same offense that we had the last several years, yeah, I would feel probably more ahead against that offense. I feel less ahead against playing our offense, but more ahead from being able to game plan, adjust, and mid-flight adjust, if that makes sense.
All right, we'll wrap up with Josh.
I'm curious just how it's been bringing in Chris Collins and how he's, you know, adjusted to, you know, or how those guys have had to adjust maybe working with him opposed to Clink, and also how, you know, are you recruiting differently? It kind of evaluating kind of what you want from that position. I mean, I know they've had a lot of success in that group, but, you know, I guess how do you look at that with a new guy at the helm?
Yeah, every coach that comes in brings a different personality, and Coach Collins fit right in with how we teach. He's a phenomenal communicator, phenomenal teacher. You know, and that was a big thing for Coach and myself, you know, when we were looking for that position. And the guys really respect him. He comes with a lot of energy and passion. He dove right in, you know, when it comes to recruiting. You know, I don't want to overstate, you know, what's going to happen there, but he's going to do a great job for us there. And he connects with our players, he connects with recruits, he connects with families. Again, it goes back to that communication, that ability to communicate. And at the end of the day, that's sort of our job as coaches, especially in the SEC. Hey, you've got to be able to communicate with your players and get it taught what needs to be taught. And you've got to be able to communicate to recruits in the recruiting and be able to show where they would fit in our system, how our system operates, what the vision, right, of both our program and where they fit in our program. And if you're a clear communicator, then I think UK can sell itself, you know, and he does that. He brings that every day, brings some great ideas. And so really excited to have Coach Collins, you know, obviously with Coach Buff back there, you know, we've got, you know, two guys that can really communicate with our players. Obviously Coach Stoops, you know, being a DB guy, we all know the history around that. So I feel like we're in great future. Our players are excited. You know, we've gotten a lot of balls in camp so far. That's good. We need that. We need to continue to get our hands, tip balls, PBUs, interceptions, all those things, because that leads to more opportunities for our offense to score. I think that was the last question. I just want to say I appreciate you guys. I miss seeing all your faces. You know, hate doing this thing by Zoom, but we'll get you here some other time.